Hello and welcome to the Turtle Tracks podcast. I'm your host, Brian Van Hooker, and I'm here with none other than Steve Lavigne, one of the original artists of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. How you doing, Steve?
Good, Brian. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. So I've had the pleasure of meeting you a couple times, but I finally got a chance to talk to you after wanting to correspond with you for some time. So I appreciate you doing this.
Well, I'm glad at least you called it a pleasure meeting me. That's a good thing right there. So.
Well, I met you at a couple times, but the last time was at a pizza party at what was that? What New Hampshire con was that?
Oh, Grand Estate Comic Con.
Yes, that was a great occasion.
That was a lot of fun. It was a fundraiser for the Turtles. So, and not us, but the real ones, the ones that live in ponds and lakes and oceans and such. So it was really cool to do that.
I mean, you do a lot of those events now with the fans?
Well, I'm always happy to do those. It's a lot of fun for me, and Kevin and all the rest of us, Jim, everybody, that makes it to the con. I think it's a nice, if money can be applied to something wonderful like that, I think it's really cool. And I mean, and for us, like anything, we've met each other at a show. It's fun for us to talk to fans at shows. So to have something like that pre-show and have kind of that one-on-one with, Turtle fans, really a lot of fun.
But what year did you start with Mirage?
I started in the year of our Lord, 1985.
Wow, so this will be 35 years of the Turtles for you.
It is, exactly, yeah. I 1 year after the boys, Kevin and Pete, started, I was invited to go along and play, so it's been a lot of fun.
Were you the first guy they hired? Forgive me, I should know that already.
I truly am. I went to high school with Kevin up here in Maine, and always kind of dug each other's stuff. And when him and Pete got this thing going, I had the opportunity at their very first con, which was down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in a little tiny Howard Johnson's, and I had to go meet Pete. And once Pete gave the nod, I guess I was brought on as a playmate for Kevin and to do anything that they wanted me to do office-wise that was available, and then lettering the books.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it seems like Howard Johnson always somehow pops up in these old stories of Turtles. I remember when I was a kid, the local Howard Johnson held these, I don't know what it was, these costumed events with the Turtles and Splinter. And I look back at the pictures, they're these terrible, creepy costumes. But
oh, it's funny. That's really funny. Yeah, I think because most Turnpike exits had a Hojo's by them, I guess, was probably why they were really accessible. And I think they all had meeting rooms, because this was literally the smallest con that I could, and I'm flashing back to it now, but it was it seemed like it was a little basement meeting room, and there were two adjacent, one large and one small, and Kevin and Pete were in the smaller one where, I don't know, I can't even imagine the number of people that were. It was really tiny, what Comic-Cons have become now,
Now, were you an artist before joining Mirage?
Well, I mean, as much as I love to draw, I was probably more of I had a more cartoony style. I always kind of say, if I had the opportunity to work for Mad Magazine, that would have been my dream job back then. I didn't have any avenue in to do that or anything. And, Kevin, again, and I, in high school, we spent a lot of time in art rooms together. And, very different style, but I, had different skills. I was good with color. So sometimes Kevin, even though our styles didn't match, he'd hand me something to, color of his, and I would give him something to ink, of mine, and color. And it was always, kind of back and forth. So I think I had a certain quality level, that Kevin knew that I could probably be trained to kind of assist in any way possible at Mirage. I always joke, a monkey walking in, if he could have held the pencil and then inked the letters, I probably got the job, but I'm glad I was there.
Well, I mean, I guess the cartoonier style suited it better for when the Turtles got cartoon here, no? Because I mean, like, if for people who don't know this, like, you're responsible for some of the most iconic and like widespread images of the Turtles. Like, they're all over the place. They're by.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, me and Ryan Brown. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was really it. I mean, and I'm very thankful. Pretty much right away. I mean, Kevin, some of the first licensed stuff that came out, even before Ryan, because Ryan was working on Tales of the Turtles with Jim as well, and I was still lettering the regular Turtle book, coloring the covers, painting some of the covers for the Mirage book occasionally, and doing some the graphic novel stuff at that time, coloring the graphic novels. And so for me, it was really fun to start drawing. Like I was kind of, like doing everything but putting pencil, drawing things. I was putting pencil to page, but it was doing sound effects and whatever. But so yeah, it was really fun. And yeah, I got to do some of the stuff early by myself, but I was much happier when Ryan and I teamed up, because Ryan's an amazing inker. He was, like I said, he was inking Jim at the time on Tales, and Ryan had a really polished style, so he would take I'd always go like, oh, sorry, and I'd see it afterwards, and it made me up my game. I had to get better at tightening my pencils up and, stuff, because, again, I hadn't really sharpened those skills for a while, so it was kind of nice to, as they became the pizza-eating Cowabunga Turtles, draw them a lot more.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, like it's hard to describe them because they're basically just, like, regular poses, but, like, the iconic images of, like, where Donnie's half in the sewer and the Turtles hanging out of it, and a bunch of ones where, like, there was just the four of them grouped together. Like, that's so much of that's your art, and for the longest time, I didn't know who drew it. It just existed. Yeah, it's
funny. Somebody joked, so a piece came up, we just listed it. I actually had some, a friend of ours, many, many, many years ago, he was an antique collector and dealer, and I got to be friends with him, and he traded art, would trade art for antiques. So I traded a few things for some stuff for our house, and Jim Lawson got wind of it, some stuff, and then Kevin traded him some stuff, and even Pete traded him some art, just art for like a piece type of a thing, and he was selling it just recently, and a group shot came up, and it was a two-piece thing that had the original group shot and it had a blue-lined, fully painted version of it. So we put it up for him, and people went crazy. But they were like, all of a sudden, I saw the chatter, little threads down the thing talking about, the original group shot, blah blah blah, and I was like, yeah, they're out there, But it's true. I mean, some of them have been used almost as much as stuff that Kevin and Pete have done, which is crazy to me, and in some ways it's more recognizable to people than Kevin and Pete's stuff, which is, again, way, way crazy to me,
It's so funny. I remember when the Turtles were going through the first, like, it's a smaller revival, but the revival around the 2003 series.
Yeah.
And then after that, they started to go back to a lot of the retro artwork, and sometimes they use your art, and sometimes they'd use artwork drawn over models for the 2003 ones, and, like, it's such a small detail, but for me, I'd be like, no, their legs weren't that long, and they were, like, I could tell it wasn't what's retro art versus what's supposed to be retro art,
Oh, sure. It's funny that the 2003 series, me and Ryan had the license to do the coloring books for the series. So we did all the coloring books that came out for the Turtles in that series, like 400 and something pages of art, and multiple color covers. We had to do Christmas things because they all, but it was fun. Pete, actually, it was a, kind of angered a couple of licensees, one of them being Random House. He broke the license up and gave it to us to produce the coloring books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was very cool. So we started our own little company, and, we worked our butts off doing the best we could, literally basing it directly off everything on TV, because at the time when we were doing this, Marvel, was doing, coloring books, and you see these beautiful airbrushed, nice covers, and then you open up, and it looked like somebody drunk traced bad panels out of, on a light table. You're like, whoa, that's a horrible drawing. So me and Ryan, our big goal was to, compete, but make this product that, a superior product that we, like what we grew up with, the stuff where you go like, this looks just like the book, or this looks just like the cartoon, that feeling. And we succeeded. It just, we didn't make a whole bunch of money because you make like nickels.
Sure.
Or less than a nickel, when you start talking about, the numbers, sometimes it's pennies on those books. And you're like, but we had to put up all the money to do this. Now we're making pennies on the back end. But, we learned.
I remember a couple coloring books when I was a kid. There was one in particular that was like all the artwork of Jim Lawson. It was this big blue coloring book, and it was like all original art for it. It wasn't like crappy recycled stuff. It was like really cool artwork.
Yeah. Jim did a whole bunch with, I think with Random House, did like some learning books, different things like that, not just coloring books and stuff. It was very cool. I don't see that around too much. I know we all gave a lot of stuff to Kevin and Pete, like, Merry Christmas, here's the art for this, like they really wanted it. But, they had more, what could we get those guys is kind of what it all led up to. So, I don't see much of that around. I know I at one point, now this is in my brain, I'm trying to trace it back, but I think it might have been when I had my shop, Shellback Artworks, here in town. One time I had Kevin, Pete, me, and Jim me, of course, because I worked there and owned it, but those guys all came up for Free Comic Book Day, and I remember seeing some of the art that, because Kevin had some in the portfolio that he was selling. Fiona, Kevin's, I don't want to call her assistant, I want to call her his boss. But I think she's kind of controls Kevin's life. How's that? Other than what Courtney does, which is be his wife. Fiona, I think, does a lot of the day-to-day contact with people through Kevin Eastman, his site and stuff. But so I saw some of that stuff from Jim there. But I hadn't seen that in a long time, and there was a lot of it. So.
I'm sure very little survives because, I know when I was a kid, I scribbled through that thing and colored, they were destroyed.
I know, you think that, Brian, but I'm always blown away and shocked and a little horrified at times, too, by people who I got this as a kid and never used it, or, the kids are still, I don't know how they get a toy and leave it in the blister card, those type of, I never can figure that out. So, people do, I'm always blown away by that, but I'd much rather if I saw that, if I worked on Jim, I think all of us echo this, that I'd much rather see the one that's colored in, dog-eared, bent, loved, twisted, and bring it up to the table to get it signed than one that's mint and never been touched, It's much nicer to see a well-loved toy or book, than one that comes out of a bomb-proof case.
You mentioned it in passing, but this is one of the things I really wanted to ask you about. Can you tell me a bit about Shellback Artworks? For years, I had planned to go up there, because I'm only 6 or 7 hours. I was like, all right, one of these days I'm going to go up, and then I found out, and then it closed. So I'd love to hear about when the store opened and all about it. I really wish, take us through a little tour of what Shellback Artworks was.
Well, you can actually get a little tour on Facebook if you go to Shellback Artworks. We still have a Facebook page. We kept that because a lot of fans, contact us through there when the shop was open about different things. So before I left, I took a little walking tour of the shop and put it up online. And so it takes a couple minutes because I just babble and walk very slowly, and it's not a big place. So basically what it was, Brian, was I always joke, people traveled very far to go to a very small comic shop. But it was it's like an art store. So I had art supplies, I had comics, I had life-size Ninja Turtles, and upstairs there was a comic art gallery. It was a really cool thing, but, in the summer, it was a wonderful place. in the winter, which you have to keep open because you're selling comics. You can't, open and close, So I lived through every winter doing art classes with, local kids, from junior. I would have liked to have high school age kids, but I had junior high and younger age kids that helped keep the doors open. It was a really cool. I had a lot of fun with it. A lot of people enjoyed it. I had some people travel from as far away as Australia to come there. They came purposefully. They were either going to go to the San Diego Comic Con or go to Boston I'm like, San Diego, Boston, not even close, but they picked Boston so they could come to Shellback as well, because they felt that was well worth it instead of going to the San Diego Comic-Con. And I was like, you are insane, but thank you. So, we had, people travel from, quite far. And on Free Comic Book Day, with Kevin and Pete, I think we had a line of 900 people out the door, because it was a small shop. So it was basically come in, go up, get signed, come down the stairs, go back out the door. But it was fun. Pete, I think, liked it actually more than I did. Pete was there quite often. Pete has a home here in Maine as well. So in the summertime, I'd occasionally hear the door, bing bong, and I'd look over and it's Pete, and he's just coming in to hang out. I had the shop for 4 years, and I'm 100% Pete signed there 6 times.
Cool.
Aside from Free Comic Book Day and other times, and that's aside from being in the shop and having somebody come in, and you can see somebody go to their phone, like it's not a big store. I can see you 2 aisles over looking at your phone. Seeing if that's Peter Laird, and then they go, oh my God, Peter Laird. He's like, yeah, and signing stuff. And I actually had somebody come up to the counter who was sitting behind the thing talking to me, and they bought something. I said, wouldn't that be great to have like one of the co-creators? I said, I worked on this, but I'm not one of the creators. And I said, wouldn't it be great to have one of the creators sign? Like, oh, that'd be awesome. I'm like, hey, Pete, and just handed it to him. They're like, oh my God. So it was nice. Pete, like I said, he. Actually, when I was closing it, this was very generous. He's, because it was money, but it was also time. I was there way too often.
Sure.
If I could be there only, a few hours a week, fine. But I was there every hour it was open, pretty much, unless, very rare occasion I had one of my kids cover for me. So when I was closing the place, Pete said, I'll pay a year's rent to keep, if you want to keep it open.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh no, that's good, thanks, man. I said, if you want to come and work behind the counter and pay a year's rent, would you work something out? But that didn't happen.
I mean, he was fairly shy too, so to know that he was getting accosted because I met him a couple times, but in the store by just walking in, that's kind of cool.
Oh, it was 2 or 3 people, so it's not truly accosted, there.
Oh, good.
He's shy, but he's. I think I always say reserved, and I guess that's another way of saying shy. Yeah, he's not. You've met Kevin and me. It's hard to shut us up. And if you met Jim, he's kind of. Jim's a little reserved, but once you get him going, same. I think all the guys were all, again, thankful for fans. How can we not be? That's without people asking us what we've done. I would have forgotten most of it. I have to remember it now to tell people.
Now, in that vein, I've read that the Mikey's personality was based on you a bit. Is that true?
Well, Kevin said it, I guess. I think things leaked into, the Turtles from all of us, and probably some of the stupider things said out of my face ended up in Mikey's, maybe. It wasn't intentional. It never was said. But, I think we all kind of, even back in the early days, looking at personality-wise, Pete's Donatello, and Kevin is, kind of a little hot-headed at times, nicest guy on the planet, but, he can get hot-headed. I think comes from his mom, who I knew very well. So, and actually Leo's kind of a combination of both of them, so, and I don't know, I am probably the goofiest one in the studio, if you want to say that. I'm always the first one to kind of lighten things up, I guess,
Oh, cool. So that's scary. So, back in the old days of Mirage, what was it like there? Like, what was it like working with Kevin and Peter? Like, what was the environment?
Well, the early days when I first joined Mirage Studios was my bedroom, because it was Kevin's apartment was there was a back porch, and there was only one bedroom. So the back porch became it wasn't seasonal. It was, sealed up and usable for winter. So that became, my bed was kind of back there where the copier and desk was, and mine and Kevin's part of Mirage Studios were drawing board, and he used like a would sit in an easy chair with a board, not like a drawing table like I would use, with socks tucked under it to prop it up at an angle, and we just sit in front of the TV and watch whatever bad movie we could rent from the video store. That was the earliest days. And then when we moved from there, when we moved to Northampton, mine and Kevin's apartment was our part, and we would do our art there, because Kevin and Pete would kind of trade the pages back and forth. And Pete had a home studio. And then we eventually got a really cool space in an old cutlery building in Florence, Massachusetts. And it was like a big old, they kind of partially finished it, kind of put up some drywall. The floor was a little wonky, they kind of, whatever boards were there, they sanded and put a lot of urethane over and put down some plywood on the empty spots. So it wasn't a beautiful renovation, but the windows were new and the ceilings were high, and we all had space for everybody. So we all had kind of, like a little, there were no walls, but we all had a little dividing line. Like, okay, this is where my space runs up. This is Ryan's. Over here is Jim, and then there's Eric and Kevin, and then Pete's got this corner. So we all kind of had staked out little areas there, and it was cool. It was a really cool space for a while, but that was kind of as the, really kind of started taking off. The series started going, so it went from comic book for me and Ryan, to doing the licensing art and a lot of that type of stuff, and Ryan's still working on Tales. But then Kevin and Pete were just getting pulled away, which that was the hard part. That's all they wanted to do was kind of just draw, and all of a sudden we were doing what they just wanted to do, and they had to deal with more of the business stuff, and unfortunately for them, a little less and less of what they truly wanted to do. But it was a great space. It just sucks at that point because that's where we kind of lost them. We kept that space for a few years. Let me think what happened after that. I think we all kind of started having families and working. I had all of a sudden had a daughter, and then within another year or two had a son. So once there were two kids, I kind of had a studio at the house and was able to kind of work from there. We'd come and get together. We'd see a lot of each other, but I think that space got a little less used. Our home studios got a little more used. Yeah, and now we're doing the same thing, working out of our homes, and see each other at Comic-Cons.
You hear that as the business got bigger, that Kevin and Peter got pulled away a little bit more. Were they dealing more with were they part of the cartoon more than people realize, or was it just the overseeing everything?
Oh no, it was overseeing everything. I mean, you think about most, if a property usually owned by a giant corporation. They're owned by big companies. So Kevin and Pete, really were, they're approving everything, looking at everything. I became later the, company art director for the licensing part of the company, just so that they didn't have to look at everything. And I could sign off on artwork so that they could concentrate on contracts and other deals and different things. Because, Mark Friedman was out there getting every deal possible, doing exactly what he's supposed to do. And the Turtles just, you experienced it. It was, as a kid, we were going through it as semi-grown adults. It was crazy. And Kevin and Pete really had to learn on the fly, pretty much the same way they did with the books. Everything was a learning on the fly for all of us, really, but Kevin and Pete in a bigger way because it was their business, but we were all kind of forced in a good way to wear many hats, and Kevin and Pete's unfortunately ended up being, they had to wear the hat of businessmen, and I think it put a real strain on their relationship as well. Kevin started Tundra around that time, and it was not a blowback from anything. I think it was just that he had stuff that he wanted to get out there, and money was coming in, and that's where he chose to try to do something that wasn't Turtles, because Mirage was kind of Turtles, and Kevin wanted to try out other characters and do other things, so, it's cool for him, but that was another big endeavor that, I mean, he took himself away from drawing, other than, he did Melting Pot at that time with Eric Talbot, but it was cool. It was great for him, but I think it kind of, kept that wedge going a little further between Kevin and Pete, how much time they had together and stuff like that. But, it's tough when business is business, and it's not always fun, and prior to that, it was a lot of fun, for both of them. I mean, it was, you always look back at as we call it, like the Kraft macaroni and cheese ramen noodle years and think like, oh, we didn't have any, but we laughed a lot.
Sure. And
we had a lot of fun. And we spent a lot of time together doing stupid things. And that dissipated over time, and that's a natural thing, but it sucks when it happens.
I mean, it's so crazy to think about, like, you get this licensing empire, like, if you look at something like Turtles Now, because there's still a lot of merch, but that's overseen by Viacom, which is this, has the bodies to do it. Whereas with back then, back then it was just a handful of people. It's crazy to think that all filtered through, Mirage and Kevin and Peter. That's a lot of. It's so much to manage.
It's a crazy amount, and it was. It only got worse, and that's not to mention after meeting with toy companies, like you say, you're not approving all the animation, but I think knowing Pete, he made notes on everything for a long time, so I think he was doing, and Kevin as well. I don't dismiss Kevin in that way. Pete just kind of loves reading those script type things all the time, and he had to do that with the 2003 series himself, because he oversaw that. But but yeah, it's a lot of work, and like you say, when you have a huge company like Viacom, unfortunately, they have too many people, I've learned, because getting anything through the process is mind-blowing. And, it's funny, I talked to Kevin one time. I think we were grumbling at a Comic-Con. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and we were both doing some stuff. I think it was for IDW, and that would have to go from IDW for approval, then to Nickelodeon for approval, then back, and then changes or whatever. So, IDW will pick one of 4 covers or whatever they wanted, 3 or 4, roughs, and then they pick one and send it along. Well, you only get a certain amount of time, and meanwhile you're just spinning, waiting for basically Viacom or Nickelodeon to approve it, and they take their sweet time, and all of a sudden it comes back and like, okay, we need it tomorrow. I'm like, well, 3 weeks ago you needed it 3 weeks ago, when you approved it, and it's like. And that happened way too often. It was funny, Kevin was telling me, but this is also Kevin, there was a collected volume, and it was the one with the Mirage run where it's kind of April and the Turtles at the farmhouse, and April, there's a whole thing called True Stories where it's all kind of seen through April's eyes. So the featured book in this run, and so Kevin puts April prominent on the cover, and Nickelodeon is like, oh no, we want Turtles on the cover. We don't need a big April. Make her smaller. Put her. So Kevin held on to the cover for a week and then sent it back, and they loved it and approved it, and he didn't change a thing.
That's great.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, well now I've learned. Okay, gotcha. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start working on the cover that Nickelodeon approved, and Viacom, not Viacom, but IDW approved, and. When they come back in 4 weeks and say, yep, we like it, no changes, then I won't have to worry about it. It'll be done. So yeah, that was a growing lesson. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So you did nothing? He goes, nothing. Not a thing. Just sent it right back. I held on to it for a week and sent it back to him. I was like, cool.
Well, I think people feel the need to criticize or give notes. It validates what they do at their level. So it's like,
oh, I get it. People are being paid. People are being paid to edit something or do something. But it was funny. Well, okay. Here's a great example, and I don't want to make this whole conversation about this, but this is a great example. Just recently, we did a series for Topps, The Art of Mirage, where we all did a bunch of cards for Topps.
Oh, those look great.
Thank you. They were a blast. We had a lot of fun doing them, and I wish they would have told us we could do as many as we want. I was like, oh, I'll do 10, and I'm like, I'll do 8, and I'm like, oh, I should have said 10, But it was really, really fun to do, and so we sent the really tight roughs off to Topps. Topps loved them. Any changes? He's like, no, I love all of them. They're perfect. So they go off to Nickelodeon for approval, and this is a 5 weeks. I'm waiting, in limbo, and I'm getting ready to go to, and I'm supposed to be working with Ryan Brown on these. So there's going to be mailing back and forth. The original art, all this time has to be done. They take 5 weeks for approvals. I get them back. There's no changes at all. They love them. 5 weeks to tell me they love the roughs. And now I have less than a week to do all the cards and try to get them to Ryan. So I pencil the first couple, send them to Ryan, start working on the other ones. I get like the next 4 penciled. I'm ready to send them to Ryan. I call him. I'm like, how you doing on the inks? He goes, oh, I'm still doing test inks on another piece. I'm like, I'm going to London next week. I gotta get these done. So I end up saying, Ryan, you ink the ones you've got, and I'll ink all the rest. And I'll color these, and you then send those when you did the night before I was flying out to London. I was finishing up the cards to send to Tots to keep to the deadline. And yeah, that was just another. And again, I hate to point a finger at Nickelodeon, but I mean, they're just that 5 weeks to not make a change seems insane to me. But that's the game.
It seems like either way, it was either everything goes through Kevin and Peter, and they wear them out in the process, or it's no matter what way you do it, it's just too much stuff. Like the turtles are just
and we forget that. We forget that all the time. I mean, I still sometimes forget that I'm part of this whole thing. When I watch the new show or something, I go, oh, this is a pretty cool show. Oh yeah, it's the Turtles. It's been 35 years, but it still seems like it's still fresh and fun for us to do, I guess. There are times we grumble and bitch and moan, trust me. But for the most part, it's fun drawing the Green Boys with bandanas.
Now, have you kept up with much of the versions that have come since?
Oh, yeah, we're probably more versed in the other ones than the original. The original series, the first week we watched because we were like, oh my god, the Turtles! And after the first week, I think we would get excited if one of our characters were appearing in an episode. But at that time, again, much like what Kevin and Pete were doing, you think about as much as the art and everything that could be put out, plus doing all the Mirage books, the Archie series, all this stuff, we were... we were doing everything, as much stuff as we could physically do. So it gave us less time to watch like the show. That to us it was like, yeah, the show. The show's over here. We're over here doing everything else.
Sure.
Kind of a feeling. So I think I've enjoyed like the 2003 series a lot, and of course I liked it because that was based on, the regular Mirage books, the early, so that was kind of cool to see them that way, and Pete having a big hand in that, and Lloyd Goldfine doing such a great job, and his team updating them, to make them viable for that time period, make them cool, and I thought that was a really cool series. I thought it was, really well done, but out of all, if you nail me. If you gun to my head, say which one, I love the Nickelodeon 2012 series.
Yeah.
Probably the best. Because they pulled in everything from everywhere. And because they were such big, I always joke, I think they were the biggest turtle nerds got the job working on that show. And I know Aunt Ward, who does the new show, worked on that with Ciro and Ciro Nelli and everybody. They did it was a great team. And again, like I said, they told some amazing stories that worked. I know why it's not on, because some of those stories were for us. They weren't for the little kids,
Oh yeah, it's so. And they would have episodes like they would kill Splinter in one episode, and then another one, Michelangelo would fight this giant talking pizza. And they were able to do it all. It was great.
Oh, it was crazy, and that's what I loved. It was it captured every element that you could. And I always say, I bow down to them because they got the Flesh-O-Matic into an episode, and it was real, and it happened, and it kind of made sense, because that was the stupidest toy in the world when came up with Playmates. And like, what is that?
I love that toy. Yeah.
But it's just such a weird thing. So it's a toilet, and you pour the ooze in, and you pull the lever, and it's like, what? And they literally made it exactly the same. And I thought that is funny as hell, and just showed their love
Sure.
of the property. So like I said, I mean, to me, I wish that didn't go away. I mean, the new one's fine. It's a little too phonetic, crazy, paced for me. Kind of.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I know it's not for me. It's for short attention span theater. But it's for kids of that age. And I have to say that to fans as well. But I mean, out of all of them, this one's the hardest for I think for me to take. The look. I wish they could, there are 4 different turtles. I'm like, no, they're all in a bowl together. They're the same. It just kind of weird that they tried to do something so drastic with them, But, hey, Nickelodeon owns them now, not us.
Yeah. I always try to find something I can, something I like about each one. But
I tried.
What's that?
I said I try too.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I just accept, okay, this just isn't my favorite version of the Turtles, but great, there's 7 other versions I love, so, it's fine.
Exactly.
And I don't hate it, it's just not for me, and that's okay,
No, I can't say I haven't watched episodes, I have. I probably watched almost as many or more episodes than I watched of the original series of the new series, so, I dig the style, I like it, it's just not... There's something that's not sitting as well. I guess probably because the 2012 series to me was perfect.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think that's probably the reason that I was like, why did we go back to this? Why didn't we keep there? Because, I think that was, like I said, it was the most fun for me to watch, and it's the one that I've watched the most. I mean, the 2003 series, I had to watch every single episode because we were drawing directly from it.
Sure.
But other than that, it was like, I probably definitely watched the 2012 series, and again, it that's my favorite incarnation. I'm looking in my studio right now at a, what is it, 3.5 foot tall Michelangelo from the show.
Oh, I have that in my basement. I love that one.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I didn't buy one when it came out, and I was at a con, and it was a local New England con that we drove to. And somebody had one, and I looked, and I'm like, that's $40. I can spend $40.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd spend $40 on a little figure. That's a real giant action. And, and the good thing is that I didn't have to bring it on a plane and buy an extra seat for it. I could put it in the car and drive home with me and my wife, Denise, so it was perfect.
And given how short Michelangelo is in that show, it's pretty much life size.
I know. It is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. They did and again, I wish they had done all of them. They did Leo, right? I think they did Leo and Mikey. Is that what all they did?
Yes, but it was just a repaint of Mikey, so he was too short, so I didn't buy it. But
oh, yeah. Well,
I know I'm nitpicking, but
you're not going to scale that. The toys weren't scaled. Were the toys scaled?
They were. I mean, they were reasonably scaled. Donnie was a little tall. They had different body molds, so.
Well, I know they did cool. That was the other cool thing is that, I liked how they actually looked different. I mean, they did a great job teenageizing them. Again, making Casey and April teenagers in that show was so smart. Again, Kevin and Pete didn't have that opportunity. It happened organically. We got to make a second book. All right, we're going to make some, because the first book was supposed to be a one-off. So, April came organically into the third book, and it was just funny that way, she came to the second book, but continued into the third book, which is cool, okay, now there's another character in the world, that they can associate with, and, it was such a weird, killing the Shredder in the first book,
Yeah.
It was not, there's not a lot of forethought there. Let's kill one of the greatest villains in comic book history now, but then it was just the guy that was created from a cheese grater,
When I remember the cartoon first, and then went back to Mirage, and I was like, "Wait, he's dead in issue 1? What?"
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know. But
didn't they know?
He didn't know. That's the whole thing. It's a total parody. It was done out of love, for those guys. It really was. It was the love of, Kirby and Miller and comics and everybody, and just that whole desire to put something out, and who knew, who knew? Even I jokingly say this when at cons when people ask stuff, but when we first were working on it, we again, Kevin and I grew up together, So we go home to these, haven't seen in a while, friends from school and stuff, and, like, hey, what are you guys doing? Hey, you're working on comics. And of course, instantly in their brains, like, Spider-Man, Batman, what do you guys draw? Oh my God, it's so great. And you go, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they kind of pat you on the back and say, good for you. Good for you. And now you say turtles, and it's you don't even have to say anything beyond that. You say, I draw turtles, and they're like, the Ninja Turtles? And they fill in the gaps, so crazy world.
I'm curious. You were talking about life-size turtles being in Shellback Artworks. What became of those?
Well, you caught me mid-drink of water there. You almost got a spray of water all over my the spit take there. They originally came from Kevin's museum in Northampton, Mass, the Words and Pictures Museum. And then when Kevin closed that down, they Pete bought them. And they went to Pete's barn, and as I was opening my shop, and this is literally probably a couple weeks before I was opening the shop, maybe a little longer because I had to do my signage still. So maybe a month before, Pete calls me and says, "Hey, do you want the turtles from the Words and Pictures Museum? They're in my barn. They're covered in dust and bat poop." And I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So I went down to visit him, and I'm thinking, not remembering that they were actually, the size of the movie turtles, but they were made of, like a wooden skeleton with styrofoam, and then sculpted styrofoam, then gessoed. So they weren't pliable, and they were very breakable. So I go to get them, and I've got a, Magnum station wagon, thinking, I can get one in the car and I'll come back and get the other ones, whatever, and not one would even attempt to fit in the car. And I looked, and they were all kind of broken up, like a leg would be broken here and a hand broken off over there, and I was like, so I rented a box truck, brought them down, like a week before I opened the shop. I've got to glue these things back together, don't know how to fix them, and paint them, and clean back crap off them, and did all that, got them up. They were there for 4 years. One went to up in Maine at a comic shop. Leo went to a comic shop in Maine. Up until this year, the other three went to this collector, Elias. He's from Northampton, Mass. He's known, Kevin for years and years. He's done stuff worked at Heavy Metal through high school. And while he worked at Heavy Metal through high school, he was slowly collecting a crazy collection of turtle stuff through Kevin. So he got the other three turtles. And then just a few months ago, I was happy to get an email from him that he purchased Leo. So all four turtles are in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Oh, right where they belong. That's cool.
Yes. Yep. So it was very odd. Yeah, it was funny. As I was closing my shop, I was like, if anything, I'd take one of these guys home, but then I don't want to, I initially didn't want to break up the set. Then I was like, somebody wanted to buy a Leo, and Leo, the particular thing at Kevin's museum was inside of a window, kind of sticking out, going, hey! So he had no legs. And in the way he was sculpted, he was the right size, he was way bigger. So if he had legs, he would have been 8 feet tall, and the other three turtles were all the actual size of the movie-size turtles. But, so he didn't have legs, so I had to build like a chimney for him to pop out of. So he looked like either that or he looked like he was in Mario World, kind of popping up, like that, kind of up. But it was, so when somebody offered to buy him first, I was like, yeah, because I thought he'd be the hard one to sell.
Oh, cool.
So needless to say, the other three went right away. The Elias, when he wanted him, he was really bummed that they had already sold Leo, and I was like, oh man, literally a day or two before, I sold him. I wish he would have cut. He didn't hit me quite at the right time, but he got there anyways.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was curious what comes to those, giant, you see them at Comic-Cons and, New York Comic-Cons and stuff like that, these giant fiberglass things, those cartoon characters. I'm like, what do they do with this afterwards, So that's cool that they went to a good home.
They do sell those afterwards. I did a signing in Florida at this shop, Tate's Comics in Florida. Great. Ever down there? not an ad for tapes. It was a wonderful show, huge place. But they had like a 12-foot Hulk, like you see that you take your pictures with outside of Comic Cons. And I was like, where'd you get that? And they go, well, you can buy him. He's for sale. I'm like, he's for sale? He's like, yep, everything in here. They had the, life-size carbonite Han Solo in the shop. And they're like, that's so cool. Everyone's taking pictures. Like, it's for sale. So, it's like crazy stuff. So all that stuff, I guess, is available. You just got to, A, have the space for it, and B, the coin to buy it.
It's the weirdest thing, like down the street from me, there's a pawn shop that has a giant 12-foot Hulk on the ceiling, on the roof of it, and I'm like, it's the most random thing. I mean, it's cool, but it's the strangest thing.
Yeah, it's funny. He probably got that cheap, I'm sure.
Right, sure, yeah.
But again, like,
someone pawned their Hulk.
When you think about them, there's not a lot of places that can take them.
No.
I mean, a lot of them must be, I'm sure scrapped, unfortunately, because who's buying this? Do you have a 12-foot ceiling in your house to put that Hulk? No. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, they're amazingly cool. And it's very bizarre, and this is totally off subject, but on subject. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers?
Yeah, of course.
Do you remember, what is it, Skull and Bean? Was it Skull and Bean?
The humans? The guys?
Bulk and
Skull, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Bulk, we were at a show just recently, and we were talking. They had like a meet and greet thing, and so we kind of ended up talking a little bit. Because I said, we hated you guys. You're our mortal enemies. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, worked on the Turtles. You guys came in with your millions of shows and tried to take over. But anyways, we were joking back and forth, and he works for a company that makes those things.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he still acts and stuff, but he says that's his main gig is kind of, he says that we make those giant things, the Hulks and all that stuff, and for Comic Cons and display places and different things like that. I was like, that's very cool. That's cool.
One of the last things I want to ask you, you were saying before that like one of the few times you after the first run, you tune into the old cartoon when one of your characters would show up. Do you remember like a character of yours that you're particularly excited about showing up in the old show?
I remember ones that didn't.
Okay.
What's funny? I think more that I was mad that some didn't show up that were better, and there was kind of secondary characters that were with other figures that showed up that I created on animation, because it was one of the things that was fun. And I always say this: Ryan Brown and Steve Murphy, of the Turtles, the Adventure series. Mm-hmm. So somehow, a lot of the characters they created, because they got like multiple books in the Archie series, so the toy company warmed up to them, and then they're like, oh, they're in 3 or 4 books. Oh, cool. Then they had an episode on TV, and I was like, huh. So I think only one of my characters got 2 books. So I think 3 was the get on TV limit.
Oh, jeez.
So I was like, But yeah, no. I mean, that was we did a lot. It's funny with the Archie series and with a lot of that stuff. Again, wearing as many hats as we all were wearing. I was also breeding at the time. Ryan wasn't, and so Ryan did a lot of toy designs that I kicked myself that I said, no, you do it, I got to go home. I got little babies I want to love. I don't, and he had no children, so his children are his toys, but that's why, Ryan's stuff got a lot of action figures out there. And it's funny, when they got to be, in the Archie series, they always needed a human form. So Ryan would go like, hey, you want to design the human form for Ray Fillet? I'd be like, oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I know it's only going to be seen in 2 panels in the book, but happy to.
Yeah, they're not making a toy of the human form of Ray Fillet.
No, it's not happening, but thank you. But we would do a lot of, we did a lot of, fun. The toy designs were fun to do, and we did a lot of redraws for Playmates, and they were doing, because they'd come with their wish list, and they'd do them on their end, and they're in-house, or not in-house, but they're, the people they had hired at Varner Toys and different places, to do the design stuff, and then they wouldn't like it, and they'd bring it to us, and we'd tweak it a little bit and send it back, and it was fun. We had a good relationship with Playmates, and and doing the toys. I wish more of our characters did get into the cartoon, but they were also creating crazy things, at Murakami Wolf, so that they wanted to get into the episode. So we'd get them in occasionally, and it usually was if they warmed up to the character, they felt they could use the character.
I remember you and I talking about that original Casey Jones and our mutual love of crazy nutbag Casey Jones in that cartoon.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I wish that he was the best. I mean, Casey was such a great character from the get-go in the original Turtle books, and I mean, in the first Turtle movie, actually this past weekend, I was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire for a 30th anniversary of the first Turtle movie event, and I hadn't watched the very first movie in many, many years, and if that, it was kind of like, I'm flipping through channels and watch a couple minutes on, TBS or whatever it was running on, it's just switching through channels. Great to watch it all again, but boy, watching Elias Koteas as Casey, it was perfect.
Yeah.
You played that character to a T, and just wonderful. It was very cool to rewatch. It was a fun thing. I did like a little panel afterwards and taught everyone to draw a turtle.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that first movie still holds up to me as some of the best stuff. Yeah,
it does. There's a couple cringy to watch. What I always think back to what was happening in the movies back then. We're not talking Marvel movies for superheroes, definitely. So, superhero movies were generally just crapshoots. They're either great or just the worst thing you've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
And being the Turtles and not having a huge, gigantic, world to build off from, like a Batman, because I mean, you got Tim Burton and his Batman, it's going to be great, but Steve Barron, great, had just basically directed great videos, amazing videos for MTV, but this is his first movie, but just, it couldn't have been a better, because I mean, the movie, like I say, holds up, almost completely, some of it even better, I thought. There's some scenes that I forgot about, and it was like, that was a great scene. I wish I could remember that scene, but we always have a fondness to the parts of the movie when we were down, because we all got to go down to the movie set while they were filming, so we all have a certain fondness for certain parts of the movie,
Well, while the history wasn't quite as extensive at the time, they kind of did the same thing as the 2012 show would do, whereas it got enough of the drama and good stories from the Mirage comics and enough of the funny stuff from the Fred Wolf series, and merged it together. And I think, to me, that still stands up as the thing that I'm most fond of in the Turtles. It's just because it has all the right pieces to it.
Oh, 100%. I agree. I mean, literally, Steve Barron and Bobby Hirschbeck I remember, I think they stayed in Northampton for quite a suite at the Hotel Northampton, and they were taking the comic books and kind of ripping up, sections, and then that was storyboarding, this section of the movie, and then we'll go, and they're gonna do this, and then so they'd fill the in between, and then they'd pull another section from another book, like the farmhouse in they're going to Northampton in the books. That's the farmhouse scene in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so cool how they were able to pull all that stuff out of there, and even though they were all from different time periods of the Turtles, even though it seems like a longer time for us, trust me.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, that was a lot of years, but it's like in the reality of a property getting as big as the Turtles, it was a short time. I think we were just working so much, all the time on it. It was always such a in your brain, always doing something, feeling. So I think that, and of course Kevin and Pete times 10 compared to all the rest of us. So, I mean, we were all kind of doing our jobs, and Kevin and Pete were conducting and keeping things going in the right directions. But yeah, it was a cool thing when they used all that stuff, and it truly did. It made the movie. The other thing is it's weird. They didn't use any let's make this cool and use a really cool cell phone that would have been the size of a suitcase.
Yeah.
In the scene. They didn't do any of that. And that's what and it may have been a budget issue, or they didn't have, a sponsor that wanted to give everybody a cell phone like they do now in movies. But it helps not date that movie. It's set in that time period, but it's not overtly like, 90.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I think it's just because it's not overly ambitious. Like, I feel like later stories, not that the Turtles can't have these big space adventures, but like, I don't know, for an introductory movie, for it to kind of keep it on the ground level and keep it manageable, and it gave more to the characters than it did some overblown story.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, I think that's why it worked so well, it wasn't an overblown story. It was a, crime drama.
Yeah.
Type of a thing, and I mean, again, having not seen it for years, you forget how good Judith Hoag was as April.
Oh, she's great, yeah.
She was such a vibrant character and so great in that movie. You go like, oh, wow, she really was good. I mean, for that time period, she did a great job, and yeah, it was wonderful, like, to rewatch it myself and being this far removed from it, instead of, we had the movie premiere, in Northampton. We had the big lights in the sky, and we all pretended we were movie stars for an evening.
That's awesome. Yeah. My last question for you is, who's your favorite turtle?
I mean, you asked at the beginning if somebody was based on me, so which one do you think?
I figured it was probably Mikey. I just had to be sure.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it is by default in some ways, but I mean, you love them all. I mean, it's like, I don't feel like a parentship like Kevin and Pete do to them, but I kind of feel like I know them all pretty well and love them all pretty equally. But yeah, I mean, Mikey, when you know somebody's kind of got a little bit more of you in them, you kind of go like, yeah, I like that guy best.
Sure.
So, I'll go with him.
Honestly, Steve, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was me as well, Brian. It was a lot of fun, and it took. If people knew the struggle,
I know
it
took a lot.
To each other. I mean, I'm surprised that one of us didn't die in the process.
Well, there's still time. I haven't published it yet, so.
Okay, get it up quick.
All right, take care.
We'll see you, Brian.
Bye.
Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Splinter taught them to be ninja teens.
He's a radical rat.
Leonardo leads Donatello does machines.
That's a fact, Jack.
Raphael is cool but rude.
Give me a break.
Michelangelo is a party dude.